Greetings, Excellencies, distinguished panelists, dear participants, colleagues. Welcome to the United Nations 13th Conference of State Parties to the CRPD side event, the intersection between peace, diversity, and disability. This session is co-organized by UNITAR, University of Tokyo COMEX Forum on Diversity, Disability, and Inclusion, and Empower Project in partnership with Nagasaki University School of Global Humanities and Social Sciences. I'd like to thank all the stakeholders who made this event happen, and our special thanks goes to Mr. Satoshi Iyama, founding director to Empower Project and the University of Tokyo, for coordinating the video production and his leadership. My name is Atsuro Tsutsumi, Kanazawa University, Japan. It is my great honor to serve as moderator today. I'd like to briefly share the objectives of this session. 14 years have passed since the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was adopted at the General Assembly in 2006. Since then, various efforts have been made to protect and promote the rights of persons with disabilities by member states, UN agencies, persons with disabilities, and their representative organizations and other key stakeholders. In the 2030 Agenda and its SDGs, the international community recommitted to its determination to foster a peaceful, just, and inclusive society which are free from fear and violence for all people, including persons with disabilities. There can be no sustainable development without peace, and no peace without sustainable development, while universal respect for human rights and human dignity, the rule of law, justice, equality, and non-discrimination, diversity, and equal opportunity, permitting the full realization of human potential is the foundation for both peace and security and sustainable development. Armed conflict and related humanitarian crisis drastically increase marginalization, while they also have disproportionate impact on marginalized populations, including persons with disabilities. With this background, in 2019, the United Nations Security Council unanimously adopted its first ever resolution, 2475, on the rights of persons with disabilities in armed conflict. The resolution provides new nexus between peace, diversity, and disability, based on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, in particular Article 11, on situations of risk and humanitarian emergencies. In this session, outstanding global leaders will share their expertise and experiences on the intersection between peace, disability, and diversity. Based on the Convention and the groundbreaking Security Council resolution, the panel discussion will explore innovative ways forward to peaceful, just, and inclusive societies for all, including persons with disabilities. Now, it is my great honor to welcome His Excellency Foreign Minister Luis Gallegos, Republic of Ecuador, and the former President of the UN Conference of State Parties of CRPD. Foreign Minister Gallegos also serves as the Chair of UNITAR Board of Trustees. The Minister is the global champion of protection and promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities, and it is our great honor to have you today, Foreign Minister.
Distinguished panelists, dear moderator, ladies and gentlemen. As President of the Board of UNITAR, I'm delighted that the UNITAR and the University of Tokyo Global Forum on Diversity, Disability and Inclusion is organizing the events in conjunction with the 13th session of the Conference of State Parties to the CRPD and the 2020 International Day of Persons with Disabilities on the 3rd of December. The voices of action of youth in promotion inclusive and diverse environments for the full implementation of the CRPD, and also the intersection of peace, diversity, and disability, also in partnership with the Voices of Youth, Japan, UNITE, and the Empower Project, University of Tokyo, KOMEX, University of Kanazawa, and the Nagasaki University School of Global Humanities and Social Sciences, in conjunction with the 13th session of the Conference of State Parties and the CRPD. Young people's voices and actions indeed play a key role in the recovery of the COVID-19 crisis and building back better toward an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable world for all, as follow-up to the Young People's Roundtable Youth Voices and Action toward an inclusive post-COVID-19 world, organized by the Global UNITAR, the University of Tokyo Global Forum on Diversity, Disability, and Inclusion earlier this August. With their innovative minds, young leaders can tackle the complexity and intersecting forms of discrimination and inequalities that help remove multiple barriers persons with disabilities face in their daily lives, environmental, institutional, and attitudinal, from the promoting diversity for prosperity for all. The theme of the intersection of peace, diversity, and disability is at the heart of the international community's continuous pursuit of the peace and prosperous world based on human rights and developments for all. With the participation of stakeholders from Nagasaki, this event will prove to be of significant importance to addressing the disability perspective in an agenda of peace and security. I trust that the energy, enthusiasm, and innovation of this forum will help transform our vulnerabilities into strengths and create a new chapter in our common endeavors toward an inclusive, accessible, and sustainable world for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Foreign Minister Gallegos, for your very inspiring opening remarks. Now, I'd like to move on to the next agenda. I'd like to start this event with a film screening today. This is a 7-minute digested version of a film entitled Kind People, directed by Mr. Kazumi Matsumoto. This is a documentary of those who have experienced Nagasaki atomic bomb 75 years ago, and the film looks into unheard voices and touches upon important messages toward peace.
まずパーってとにかくすごいんですよ。でしばらくしてドーンと来て机ごとバンと壁にぶつかられる。気がついたら壁にこう寝てたから、あら何したんだろうと。ああそうか、さっきドンって誰かと思って、そしたらみんなが逃げろ逃げろ逃げろって言って走って外に出てるから一緒について、で横穴っていうね、僕中にいっぱい入って、そこで暗くなるまでもう怖くてですね。そうですよね。
真っ黒焦げでね、横たわってました。家の前で。もう家は全然ないから。脳みそとこの内臓ねがまだ焼けてなかったから、周囲の木切れを拾い集めて焼きました。
おばあちゃんが。
ああ、焼きました。そしてね、焼いてしもうて骨になって、その骨を拾って矢の平のね、お墓に埋めてもらいました。そしていとこがね、 高校生やったのよ。そしたらその高校生が意地悪してね、私おられんの。
家がなくなったから、どこに気をもない。
その家にはもうおられない。
いとこのところにね、身を寄せたけど、
だから
いじめられた。
さまよい歩きました。友達のところを。そしてもうお母さんと死ねばよかったなと思いました。その時はね。でも幸いいい友達がおって、そこにちょっとお世話になってましたね。やっぱ持つべきものは友達。だから友達っていいね。友達いいですよ。もう友達のとこにね、高知邦子って言ってね、今オバマに結婚して行ってる。その人がよしてくれた。
助けてくれた。身内じゃなくって。
他人、友達。
その人がいたからおばあちゃんは今
だから
その人がいたからよかったのよね、おばあちゃんはね。助けられたのよね。
その友達のことを考えたらね、私涙が出る。嬉しくて。本当。もうこんないい友達ってないですよ。今はね、オバマっていう温泉地帯があるけど、運転のためにね、そこに結婚して行っています。自転車に行ってるけども、今はもうどんなしてるかもうちょっと音信がね普通ですけど、もうその人がよしてくれました。もう涙が出た。
ね、身内の人がね、そんなしてね、いじめてね、
よかった。
友達が助けてくれたわけね。
もうその子がおらんなら私どんなになってるかなと思うぐらいね、よくしてくれたんですよ。写真もあるけどね、もうほんと友達ってね、いい友達がおればね、いいですよ。
そのアメリカの人たちに対して何か恨みつらみとかそういう気持ちを持ったの？
不思議とそういう気持ちになありませんでしたね。
憎しみはないですね。
ない、正直言って思いませんでした。この人が憎いとは思いませんでした。
恨みつらみって何か気持ちってありました？
そんなさ考えんやったね。恨み、いや別に恨みには思ってないね。
そうですね、私個人的としてはそんな恨みには思ってません。
そういうなんかアメリカに対して良くないイメージとかってあります？
いえ、全然そんなことはありません。
原爆を落ちたということの、それに対してはね、アメリカ人を憎んだってしょうがないというようなね、諦めもあるんですかね。
やっぱり戦争だけは体験せんとわからんでしょうね、やっぱりね、言葉ではなかなかね。
息子たちにはここ息子には話したけど、出た子はそうは話しません。
それは何でですか？
なんてですね、私も
今はお幸せですか？
はい。もう幸せと思ってます。何でも私いい方にばっかり取るんですよ。だからもう悲しいことがあってもそれは我慢して、いろいろあるんですよ、悲しいことも。もうもう本当末永く平和でいてほしいって思いますよ。
戦争のないことや。ねえ、戦争したらダメですよ。ね、一般の人も亡くなるじゃないですか。
もう絶対にダメです、戦争は。絶対ダメです。話し合いで決めないと。
Thank you very much. Now, it is my privilege to welcome Professor Takashi Izutsu, Director, UNITAR University of Tokyo Forum on Diversity, Disability, and Inclusion. Professor Izutsu has been a key leader in various global efforts on promotion of the rights of persons with disabilities, including as a Senior Knowledge Management Officer at the World Bank and the Chief of Mental and Psychosocial Well-being and Disability at the UN headquarters. It is my great pleasure to have you, Professor Izutsu.
Thank you very much, Professor Atsuro, for your kind introduction, as well as your persistent leadership in this important area of disability-inclusive humanitarian action. It's been my privilege to have worked with you when you were the Global Coordinator on Disability at the UNITAR-UTokyo, as well as Japan International Cooperation Agency, JICA, through the process to lead to disability-inclusive SDGs and beyond. I would like to also thank UNITAR for co-convening this important event as part of UNITAR-UTokyo COMEX Forum on Diversity, Disability, and Inclusion in close partnership with other UN agencies and partners. I would like to deeply thank His Excellency Foreign Minister Luis Gallegos for his strong leadership for decades as the global champion of disability inclusion and empowerment. Today, I would like to give some overview on international normative frameworks relating to disability-inclusive humanitarian action, with special attention to mainstreaming the rights of persons with disabilities in peace and security policies and programs. In particular, I would like to look into the groundbreaking Security Council Resolution 2475 on the rights of persons with disabilities in armed conflict. The UN celebrated its 75th anniversary this year, and that means 75 years have passed since the end of the World War II. Are we now living in a safer and more peaceful world? The answer is not straightforward. In 2016, more countries experienced violent conflict than at any point in almost 30 years. According to the World Humanitarian Data and Trends 2017 published by UN OCHA, as much as 402 conflicts were ongoing in 2016 compared with 278 in 2006. The number of people forcibly displaced by violence and conflict also increased to reach an unprecedented 65.6 million in 2016. The global number of internally displaced persons reaches 40.3 million, which is now double the number of refugees, which is 22.5 million. Conflicts and humanitarian crises are becoming more complicated, fragmented, longer, and less responsive to traditional forms of resolution. For example, approximately 97% of humanitarian action, people in need, and allocated resources were in complex emergencies. Dominant drivers of conflict have changed and include unresolved regional tensions, a breakdown in the rule of law, absent or co-opted state institutions, illicit economic gain, the scarcity of resources exacerbated by climate change, increasing gaps in economic and social status, and fear and anxiety in our mind. In addition, while technology often promotes accessibility and opportunities, technological advances have raised concerns about lethal autonomous weapons and cyber attacks, the weaponization of bots and drones, biological attacks utilizing AI and 3D printing, and the live streaming of extremist attacks. In this changing environment, persons with disabilities suffer from further marginalization with disproportionate impact, including abandonment, violence, and lack of access to basic services. In an effort to respond to these, the UN Security Council has unanimously adopted the first ever resolution on the rights of persons with disabilities in armed conflicts in 2019, based on the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, CRPD, adopted at the UN General Assembly in 2006. The Article 11 of the Convention states, states parties shall take all necessary measures to ensure the protection and safety of persons with disabilities in situations of risk, including situations of armed conflict, humanitarian emergencies, and the occurrence of natural disasters. Conventions are legally binding among those countries that ratify them, and 181 states parties have ratified the convention. Based on CRPD, the groundbreaking Security Council resolution urges all parties to armed conflict to take measures to protect civilians with disabilities and to prevent violence and abuses against them, including those involving killing and maiming, abductions and torture, as well as rape and other forms of sexual violence in conflict and post-conflict situations. Emphasizes the need for states to end impunity for criminal acts against civilians with disabilities and to ensure access to justice, effective remedies, and reparation, and calls upon safe, timely, and unimpeded humanitarian access to all people in need of assistance, with underlining the benefit of providing sustainable, timely, appropriate, inclusive, and accessible assistance to civilians with disabilities affected by armed conflict, including reintegration, rehabilitation, and psychosocial support to ensure that their specific needs are effectively addressed, in particular those of women and children with disabilities. And the resolution encourages member states to ensure that persons with disabilities have equal access to basic services, including education, healthcare services, transportation, and information and communication technologies and systems. Urges member states to enable the meaningful participation and representation of persons with disabilities, including their representative organizations, in humanitarian action, conflict prevention, resolution, reconciliation, reconstruction, and peace building. Emphasizes the importance of building capacity and knowledge of the rights and specific needs of persons with disabilities across UN peacekeeping and peacebuilding actors. Urges member states to eliminate discrimination and marginalization, particularly those who face multiple and intersecting forms of discrimination, and requests the Secretary General to include information and related recommendations related to persons with disabilities in thematic and geographic reports and regular briefings to the Council, as well as to include data disaggregated by disability, with recognizing the importance of interactions between civil society and the Council, including inviting persons with disabilities and their representative organizations to brief the Council. In addition, there are several important tools which are also useful in disability-inclusive humanitarian action, including response to armed conflict. For example, the Charter on Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities in Humanitarian Action was endorsed by member states, UN agencies, and numerous human rights networks at the World Humanitarian Summit in 2016. The Charter reaffirmed a determination to make humanitarian action inclusive of persons with disabilities and to take all steps to meet their essential needs and promote the protection, safety, and respect for the dignity of persons with disabilities in situations of risk. The Charter established 5 actionable commitments, which are non-discrimination, participation, inclusive policy, inclusive response and services, and cooperation and coordination. In addition, the Interagency Standing Committee IASC Guidelines on the Inclusion of Persons with Disabilities in Humanitarian Action was published last year, 2019. These are the first humanitarian guidelines developed with and by persons with disabilities and their representative organizations in association with other humanitarian stakeholders. They are designed to promote the implementation of quality humanitarian programs and to establish and increase both the inclusion of persons with disabilities and their meaningful participation in all decisions that concern them. The guidelines recommends a twin-track approach that combines inclusive mainstream program with targeted interventions for persons with disabilities. The guidelines discusses 4 must-do actions, namely 1. Promoting meaningful participation, 2. Removing barriers, 3. Empowering persons with disabilities, and 4. Disaggregating data for monitoring inclusion. The IASC guidelines then provides action-oriented what to do for each sector, such as education, livelihood, health, water, sanitation, and hygiene sectors, among others, for different phases of preparedness, response, and recovery. These strong foundations for disability-inclusive peace and security policies and programs are developed as a result of hard work by member states, UN agencies, persons with disabilities and their representative organizations, academia, and others. Now is the time to move forward to implementation in constructive partnership. And in the process, it will be strategic to learn from experiences from development as well as disaster risk reduction. For example, our recent publication with the UN, Disability Inclusive Disaster Risk Reduction, an urgent global imperative, includes good practices and lessons learned from the world, as well as monitoring scales, and many of those are applicable to humanitarian action. In addition, as the nature of the threat to armed conflict has evolved considerably, we need to update our approach. We now know that root causes of conflict is a fear to differences and anger against gaps and disparity, and as the Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, has stated, the threats to these values are most often based on fear. And our duty to the people we serve is to work together to move from fear of each other to trust in each other. Trust in the values that bind us and trust in the institutions that serve and protect us. 75 years ago, the global community has already declared, since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed in the UNESCO Constitution. Starting to look into these emotional aspects and psychological well-being with changing our society to respect differences rather than being afraid of them, and utilizing arts and culture as effective tools to move our mind and bind us together, I believe that we can realize peace and security in a future world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Izutsu, for your insightful presentation. Now, I'd like to welcome Mr. Dale Busher, Vice President of Women's Refugees Commission. Mr. Busher is leading Women's Refugees Commission programs, including those on livelihoods, disabilities, displaced out-of-school youth, gender, reproductive health, and detention and asylum. Mr. Busher has been working in the refugee assistance for decades in a variety of capacities, which include his work with Vietnamese boat people in the Philippines, displaced Kurds in northern Iraq, Bosnian refugees in Croatia, and with Kosovars in Albania and in Kosovo, and others. He has played key roles in the development process of the Humanitarian Charter, as well as the IASC guidelines. Mr. Busher, it is my great privilege to have you. The floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Dale Busher. I'm the Vice President for Programs at the Women's Refugee Commission in New York. We are a research and advocacy organization that has been working on disability inclusion for over a decade across humanitarian response efforts. In that time, what have we learned? Persons with disabilities are least able to flee violence and conflict. If they do manage to reach a place of relative safety, they are least likely to have access to the programs and services that are part and parcel of humanitarian response. And if and when return is possible, they are the individuals and groups most likely to be left behind. So they are forgotten pre-conflict, pre-displacement, during displacement, and post-return. Since we are a research and advocacy organization, our efforts have focused specifically on humanitarian response, and that will be the focus of my talk with you all today. So over the past 13 years, looking specifically at disability inclusion in the humanitarian response, what have we seen, learned, and more importantly, done? 13 years ago, persons with disabilities were by and large not included in mainstream programs and services in the humanitarian response. There were at times specialized services for them, rehabilitation services, the provision of mobility devices, etc. But they were seldom included in education programs, in health and reproductive health services, in gender-based violence prevention and response programs, and in livelihood programs. They were viewed more often as people with needs as opposed to people with abilities. They were also viewed as a seemingly homogeneous group with little understanding of the different needs and capacities of persons with visual impairments, persons with hearing impairments, persons with intellectual disabilities, and so on. If there was an attempt to include persons with disabilities, these attempts tended to focus on those with physical disabilities, those that are most visible. And the responses tended to be supply rather than demand driven. The provision of a ramp, building a wheelchair ramp, for example, the provision of prostheses, those kinds of things, versus a focus on inclusion and creating a welcoming, user-friendly, adapted, and appropriate service and services for the types of disabilities that may be visible or not. We learned, for example, when focusing specifically on gender-based violence prevention and response programs, that persons with disabilities were not consulted and were not accessing the services. This, in spite of the fact that research in humanitarian settings indicates that women and girls with disabilities may be as much as 4 times more likely to experience sexual and gender-based violence than women and girls without a disability. When we asked practitioners why there wasn't better outreach and inclusion of women and girls with programs, they told us, we don't have the expertise. We don't know how to work with them. As if persons with disabilities are somehow an entirely different species than the rest of us. Of course, you work with them like you work with any other survivor, with empathy, recognizing their agency and choice, and learning from them about their wants and their needs. So over the decade, we've pushed, we've advocated, and we've developed tools, guidance, and resources. We were instrumental in getting the Disability Charter on the agenda of the World Humanitarian Summit. We worked with UNHCR, the UN Refugee Agency, on its executive committee conclusion on refugees and other persons of concern with disabilities. And we were part of the task team that developed the Interagency Standing Committee guidelines on the inclusion of persons with disabilities in humanitarian action. Most recently, we've been training gender-based violence practitioners and organizations of persons with disabilities in Sub-Saharan Africa and South and Southeast Asia on the GBV section of those guidelines, and directly working with partners in Cox's Bazar as well as inside Myanmar on implementation of those guidelines. So there's been immense progress over the past decade, but the policies and the rhetoric continue to outpace the practice. Persons with disabilities in crisis and displacement settings continue to be marginalized, neglected, forgotten, and overlooked. The societies we're trying to create, peaceful societies, inclusive societies, and societies that respect and elevate diversity and the dignity of every individual, can only attain those lofty goals when we truly leave no one behind, when we truly recognize the agency, the capacities, and the unique abilities that each person has to contribute to building a more peaceful and just world. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Busher, for sharing your rich experiences and insights from the concrete actions. Now, I'd like to welcome Dr. Nafisa Siddique, Head of Mental Health and Psychosocial Support, BRAC Institute of Educational Development in Bangladesh. Dr. Siddique has been operating an innovative program on mental health and psychosocial support for marginalized Rohingya refugees in Cox's Bazar. Dr. Siddique has been also spearheading psychosocial support programs in the COVID-19 response in Bangladesh. It is my great pleasure to have you, Dr. Siddique. The floor is yours.
Hello, everyone. This is Nafisa from BRAC Institute of Education and Development, and I'm working for mental health and psychosocial support team. As you know, BRAC has been putting relentless effort to make mental health available for all in Bangladesh, and in order to do so, BRAC has been trying to bring mental health support and also psychosocial support at the doorstep for many. To do so, BRAC has introduced the paracounselor model, and that is because in Bangladesh, in the health infrastructure, the paraprofessionals like birth attendant, the paramedics, and health workers have proven to be very effective. So keeping in mind all these successes, BRAC thought that it might be very effective to introduce the paraprofessionals in mental health who are the paracounselors. And the paracounseling model was first introduced to reflect and support the crisis of the adolescents in the urban slums, and that has proven to be very effective. So when the influx took place in the 2017, BRAC thought that we might be able to replicate the same paracounseling model into the refugee camps and to address the mental health support required by the Rohingya population. As you know, that Rohingya community has been through a humongous amount of experience of violence and trauma. So it was very essential to support this community by some sort of a mental health support. And in order to do so, it was absolutely essential to introduce this paracounseling model in the refugee camps, because Bangladesh has very few mental health professionals like psychologists and psychiatrists. So this paracounseling model was absolutely essential in 2017 to be able to reduce the distresses among the Rohingya population and to continue with the service provision for mental health support in the camps. BRAC actually took the women mostly from the Rohingya community as well as from the host community to train them into paracounseling skills. And these paraprofessionals have been successfully working in the Rohingya camps to provide the mental health support to children, mothers, and also, of course, women, and then the adolescents. This is interesting to see that the paraprofessionals have been in a position to develop very good rapport with the community people, because most of them understand the dialect and they have an access to the community members, they have an access to the community, and they're very well accepted by the community members. and also because they understand the cultural nuances really well. So it is much more easier for them to address the cases and the troubles they want to address for providing psychosocial support in the community. These paraprofessionals and the paracounselors have been bounded by some ethical guidelines, like they have been strictly trained to maintain the confidentiality of the client's sharing, and also they are taught to be non-judgmental towards the beneficiaries. And these paraprofessionals and paracounselors have received rigorous training on mental health support skills, and they have actually been trained really well by the psychologists. And when they have any kind of a struggle in addressing a client or a certain case, they usually consult with the psychologists. And psychologists are the people who either support and supervise the paracounselors with the required skills to address the difficult cases, or they also look into the case referred by the paracounselors. So the paracounselors are rigorously trained for having the capacity to address many difficult cases, as well as during the COVID, the paracounselors were very much involved in providing support for many of the other frontliners, like health workers and play leaders. And this has actually brought them to a point where they have acquired much more efficacy, and they have actually acquired many more micro skills that they were trained in. And all these micro skills were specially tailored, and they were designed to make them easier for the paracounselors to acquire and to address, so they may be able to implement all these skills in their work. And this went really well. So the paracounselors are in a position now where they have proven themselves to be very effective, as they have been able to address all these much more difficult skills, although they were made easier for them to acquire. But as a whole, they do have a whole lot of skills now. And if we look back that the paracounselor model was first established in 2013, and after a journey of 6 to 7 years' time, the paracounseling model has introduced so many more finer skills to the paracounselors. So now the paracounselors are in a better position to address the critical or somewhat difficult problems of the clients and the beneficiaries. And as this model was firstly developed to address the vulnerability of people in the community, so this is in a pretty good position to address the troubles and distresses of the people in the community who are either mentally or physically challenged, and also the requirement of psychosocial support for their caregivers, because we know it is not easy to be caregivers for 24/7. So this is an incredible model that has proven to be effective in a very challenging condition under the influx. And because of the South Asian context, where the number of mental health professionals are very few, this paracounseling model can be actually a revolutionary step forward to introduce mental health support system to be available for all. So that is one of Brack's dream, to make mental health support available for all in Bangladesh. And this para-counseling model has made it very easy to bring the very finer and the tertiary level of service to be available at the doorstep for many of the population in the community. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siddiq, for sharing your inspiring and innovative work in Bangladesh. I'd like to also thank you for highlighting the importance of mental health and the psychosocial aspects in the protection of the rights of marginalized populations, as well as in an effort to achieve peace and security. Now, it is my great pleasure to welcome Ms. Abia Akim, the Global Chair of the UNICEF Global Youth Council and the coordinator of the South Asia Disability and Development Initiative Project. Ms. Akim is a key member of the UNITAR University of Tokyo Forum too, and it is great to have you today, Ms. Akim.
When we talk about the inclusion of persons with disability and accepting their diversity, it is critically important to provide them the environment which is safe and protecting their rights. And for that purpose, it is important to bring the voices of persons with disability on the table. We know 10 to 15% of the total population are persons with disability. 50% of them are women and girls with disability, and more than 80% are living in the rural areas who are facing all the disasters, humanitarian crisis, and the vulnerability on the lives. And they are the first one who were targeted during the war or the conflict situation. And the result is on the impact on the lives of persons with disabilities that like families left them alone, left them completely behind and vulnerable. They thought like we can take the expensive things because they are going to help us, they are going to assist us, but persons with disability are the burdens. And in that way, they face the vulnerability and also the discrimination, violence, harassment, and it is difficult to manage their life after that. They are economically poor, they don't have the support mechanisms. We have the policies, the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability have clearly indicated the peace and security for persons with disabilities is on the top priority. We also witness on the different conventions and the policies and legislation, especially the Sendai framework, the convention on the landmines and all, in all the policies it's mentioned. But how we are creating the link of the disabled people organization, what they are doing at the grassroots level, and at the same time what state and the government officials and different stakeholders are contributing. So creating a linkage just between the two stakeholders, and at the same time providing a long-term supportive policies and the frameworks where we can see the role of persons with disability. They can talk about their rights, they are included, more visible, and bringing the voices to make a world which is more safer, more like elected and a resilient society for persons with disabilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Akim, for specifically highlighting the important area of women and girls with disabilities and its intersection with peace and security. Now, it is my honor to welcome Professor Kazuhiko Moji, Dean of School of Global Humanities and Social Sciences, Nagasaki University. Dean Moji, a leading expert on human ecology, will share 75 years of experience in Nagasaki from the lens of the intersection between diversity, disability, and peace. Dean Moji, welcome, and the floor is yours.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Moji from Nagasaki University School of Global Health and Tropical Medicine, and also from the Global Humanity and Social Sciences. Today, I want to speak about redefining health in the intersection between diversity, disability, and peace amid COVID-19 pandemic. Let me share my slide. After the Second World War in the 1940s, the World Health Organization was established, defining health as a state of complete physical, mental, and social well-being, and not merely the absence of disease or infirmity. In the preamble to the Constitution of the WHO, the preamble mentions the following, emphasizing health as a human right and the foundation of peace and security. The enjoyment of the highest attainable standard of health is one of the fundamental rights of every human being without distinction of race, religion, political belief, economic, or social condition. The health of all peoples is fundamental to the attainment of peace and security. The achievement of any state in the promotion and protection of health is of value to all. Unique development in different countries in the promotion of health and control of disease, especially communicable disease, is a common danger. It's a case for COVID-19. And healthy development of the child is of basic importance. The ability to live harmoniously in the changing total environment is essential to such development. The extension to all people of the benefits of medical, psychological, and related knowledge is essential to the fullest attainment of health. Informed opinion and active cooperation on the part of the public are the utmost importance in the improvement of the health of the people. Government have a responsibility for the health of their people, which can be fulfilled only by the provision of adequate health and social measures. This WHO's definition of health is very idealistic, but is it realistic enough to make effective health promotion for all? There has been a lot of discussion on it. First, complete health is simply not achievable. You may feel healthy today, but are you sure? You may have fatigue, shoulder pain, obese, or weight loss. So nobody is perfect in health. There is a diversity of health, and this diversity of health is important and should not be neglected. Your health condition at present will not last forever. We, living organisms, will not existing forever, so our health conditions are changing and not sustainable. Second, the WHO defined the absence of disease or infirmity as a condition of health, but in reality, people are healthy even if they have disease or infirmity or disability. With the increasing number of aged people in the world, many people have disease, infirmity, or disability. Many young people also have disability or infirmity because of injuries, congenital disease, or acquired diseases. With the progress of medical treatment, people with diseases, infirmity, and disabilities are living much longer than before, and the number is increasing. So it is a time to separate the concept of health and the existence of disease, infirmity, and disability. We need to create a better world for people with or without disease, infirmity, and disability. The 2021 Tokyo Paralympic Games will be a good opportunity to see how healthy those athletes are and to think again about what health is. I'm sure that they are much healthier than myself, physically and mentally, despite of their impairment. We can learn that it is of no use to compare one's health to others. You should stay healthy or be healthier in your life. People can be healthy or healthier even in any conditions until their death. By effective social support and social protection, we need to produce such a society for everybody. Dr. René Dupos, an eminent microbiologist and thinker, mentioned in his book, Mirage of Health in 1959, that solving problem of disease is not the same thing as creating health and happiness. This task demands a kind of wisdom and vision which apprehends in all their complexities and subtleness the relation between living things and their total environment. Health and happiness are the expression of the manner in which the individual responds and adapts to the changes that he meets in every life. And these challenges are not only those arising from the external world, since the most compelling factors of the environment, those most commonly involved in the causation of disease, are the goals that the individual sets for himself, often without regard to biological necessity. This ecological view of health was named as eco-health. I strongly believe eco-health thinking should be promoted amid COVID-19 pandemic. There is no kind of complete health, but all people, including persons with disability, can live healthy lives. Those persons appeared in the film on Nagasaki might be the great example. They might have physically and mentally injured or got impairment long ago in the last war. However, many of them lived healthy lives as seen in the film. Under the COVID-19 pandemic, we must leave no one behind, including persons with disabilities. Rather, they should be first cared. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Dean Moji, for your insightful presentation based on long history of interaction with various cultures in Nagasaki. Now, it is my great pleasure to welcome Ms. Rika Sugata, representative of UNITE and Empower Project. Ms. Sugata is one of the key young leaders on diversity, culture, and innovation through her activities at UNITE. UNITE has been leading social movements such as Empower Project in partnership with UN agencies and other stakeholders. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Sugata.
Thank you very much, Professor Tsutsumi, for your kind introduction. I would like to thank UNITAR-UTokyo Diversity Forum and other co-organizers for giving me this wonderful opportunity. It is a great honor for me to share our activities as well as my personal thoughts on this important occasion today. Let me start talking about myself. I was born and raised in a peaceful town in Japan. So far, nothing stopped me from moving forward just because I was a girl. Nothing prevented me from learning simply because I had a disability. So, though I knew that many armed conflicts were ongoing and they had serious impacts on large numbers of innocent people, I had felt powerless against such huge and deeply rooted issues. I thought there was nothing I could do about peace from a distance. However, my thoughts have changed gradually after reading the first ever Security Council resolution on the rights of persons with disabilities, showing the intersection between disability, diversity, and peace. The resolution reminds us that root causes of conflicts are marginalization and exclusion. Moreover, the resolution implies some possibilities that, in terms of diversity, youth with and without war experiences can contribute to achieving a more peaceful and inclusive world where anyone, including persons with disabilities, can be protected from violence and discrimination in armed conflicts and beyond. Today, I would like to highlight two of our activities related to disability, diversity, and peace. First of all, I would like to share an activity by Unite, a youth organization in Japan that I serve as a representative. Unite aims at raising awareness of SDGs and promotes youth actions based on the principle of leaving no one behind through arts and culture. We believe that arts and culture, such as music pieces, poems, photos, or movies, help us understand others beyond many differences, unheard voices, and invisible thoughts. They also help us cultivate kind attitudes toward others. For example, though I have no experience of words, I can see and hear the impact of them through artworks vividly because such works are created by artists' own expressions, because such works reflect artists' true feelings from agonies to joy. Our heart is often moved by their honest expressions. In other words, thanks to artistic mediums, we can feel closer to the hearts of others and we can understand each other better beyond geographical distance and beyond time. I believe this is something valuable that we all share in common. Therefore, arts and culture can bring a key foundation for moving forward to a more peaceful future. Based on such a concept, we Unite hosted a diversity film festival in Tokyo in collaboration with UNITAR-UTokyo Diversity Forum and other partners. This event screened various movies which depicted diversity from new perspectives. It provided the audience and us organizers precious opportunity to think of the value of differences in depth, as well as what we can do in achieving a more inclusive future for all. My second story is about a new culture that we believe can contribute to building a defense of peace in our mind as well as in this world. The Empower Project is promoting a new culture that we indicate our willingness to support others using magenta star badges. Our project aims at making anyone be a supporter for those in need. What makes our project innovative is its focus on individual needs on the spot. Anyone may need support when one is not feeling well or when one is lost in a foreign town. Likewise, anyone can be a supporter, regardless of one's attributions such as our nationality, disability, etc. More importantly, since we all have our own strengths and needs which are changing over time, visible conditions or stereotypical misconception do not determine who we are, what our needs are, or what we can do. Therefore, direct communication is necessary for all of us to truly understand someone around us. The Magenta Star promotes mutual support, making the most of individual differences. We believe mutual support and mutual understanding can be linked to the elimination of social barriers around us. And in doing so, I hope everyone will take it granted that differences are the value rather than threats. Last but not least, I would like to share my personal feelings through engaging in youth activities that I have mentioned today. In our organizations, every one of the members respects each other. They have never treated me too specially just because I am blind. Instead, we always try to understand each other's strengths. When we hold an event, for instance, I cannot arrange a venue or cannot design visually appealing slides just as they do. but I am good at leading discussions, so they can't return the role of the chair to me. As such, differences do not result in the exclusion or marginalization among us. Rather, many different strengths fill each other's gap and make every activity successful. I understand I am one of the lucky ones, but I strongly believe that a culture of positiveness and kindness is one of the crucial factors in achieving a truly peaceful and inclusive world where each and every one of us can live freely from exclusion, marginalization, and various crises. Our voices and actions might be small, however, the role of youth in inclusive peace must be huge. Utilizing arts and culture, we can be more attentive to the feelings of others, including those in totally different situations. Likewise, through sharing our own strengths with each other, we can create a new culture where all of us will benefit from differences and where all of us live together in peace. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your wonderful presentation and sharing your inspiring activities. Your presentation clearly shows that the young generation plays a central role of innovation and peace in the future. Now, I would like to thank all the distinguished speakers, as well as all the participants from the world. I would like to close this event today with citing again the preamble to the Constitution of UNESCO. Since wars begin in the minds of men, it is in the minds of men that the defenses of peace must be constructed. Respecting differences, promoting inclusion, as well as protecting mental and psychosocial well-being of all, are the foundation for peace and security, as well as development. I hope we can work together for that. Thank you very much for your participation today, and I am looking forward to seeing you again.
「夏はひまわりせみしぐれ」「遠くの逃げ水」「あなたと歩いた坂道」「風の通り道」「屋根と屋根の隙間から」静かに光る海遠い観覧車緑あの時と同じ胸がざわめいていたいあの頃のあなたは少女の手を離れ遠く彼方に消えてゆく風船あの時素直に泣けたら今頃二人は後悔などしないけれど決してしないけれど